thousands. And so he sought for David's life. And David, while he was escaping, he went to the home of Anan. And Anan protected him. And so when Anan died and his son became king, David wanted to show kindness to him, and he sent his men, sent his soldiers into him and said, "What can I do to help you?" But his son was afraid. His son thought David wanted to take over his kingdom. He was afraid of him. And so his son said, "Now, what can I do? Because David's just trying to take advantage of me. He doesn't want to thank me for what my father did. He doesn't want to help me." And so you know what he did? When David sent his servants, Hunan, because of his threat that he felt David was doing to him, he cut off David's men's hair. And he cut off their garments. And he sent them home with their garments cut in half and their hair cut. And he sent them away. And when David heard about it, he was angry. But he felt ashamed for his men because their hair had been cut off. And he told them to stay in Jericho until your hair grows back, and you can come back then with honor unto the children of Israel. So you see, hair has much significance in the Bible. A crew cut. Crew cut of righteousness or a crew cut of hidden sins? What about that? In Genesis 41 and 14, it said Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. And Joseph was in a dungeon. And you remember the story of how when Joseph was in Egypt, he went to the land of Egypt, and how that he interpreted a dream for a butler there. And he and the butler were in a dungeon, in jail. And the butler promises Joseph that if he would interpret the dream and the dream come true and he was delivered, he would remember him and cause him to come out of the dungeon. But he didn't do it. Just like people today, the minute he got out of there, he forgot all about Joseph. But then when the king had a dream that no one could interpret, he thought about Joseph. And he said, "There's a man that I remember that told me the interpretation of a dream." And the king wanted to know where was he. He said, "Oh, he's in the dungeon. I had forgot all about him." So he said, "Send for him." And he sent for Joseph, and listen what it says. And they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And it said Joseph shaved himself, washed his clothes, and he changed his raiment and came unto Pharaoh. If we are to present ourselves to the Gentiles, to a nation that does not believe God, the significance of being clean, of being dedicated, of being pure, it's important. So you see, Joseph didn't just come out of the dungeon looking any kind of way, but he cleaned himself up and presented himself as a pure and holy servant of God. He cleaned himself up, shaved himself, representing God, pure and holy. Jeremiah 7 and 25. the prophet was speaking to the children of Israel when they had disobeyed God. And listen what he says. Cast off thine hair, cut off thine hair, O Jerusalem, crew cut for God. Cast it away. Take up a lamentation on high places, for the Lord hath rejected and forsaken the generation of this wrath. Because Moab had gone into Bijah, the high places, to weep, and all the heads shall be bald, and every beard cut off. You've transgressed. You've transgressed the law of God. In order to come back, cut off your hair, shave yourself. In other words, if you're going to come to a pure and loving God, you've got to come with cleanness, with purity. You've got to lay aside certain things. What are the things that you have to lay aside? Smoking, drinking, drugs, lying, cheating, stealing. All of that. You cannot come to God and expect to hold on to certain things. So he's saying to them, wash yourself, clean yourself up. You've been rebellious. You've gone after idols. But in order to come to a pure and loving God, you've got to lay all that aside and come to him with a pure heart. There's one other type of hair that we want to talk about, and that's dreadlocks. And many of you know because they're pretty prevalent in the land today. Dreadlocks of righteousness, full of good works. In John 12:3, it speaks about a woman who came in. Jesus was at the house of Simon, eating. And this woman with long, beautiful hair came in, and she knelt at the feet of Jesus. And she took her hair and dried his feet and covered with ointment. So you see, it can be significant. For she washed her Savior's feet and dried his hair, dried him with her hair. Dreadlocks for God. What about you?